Good morning, everybody. I'm Sam Albrecht. I am the Director of the Office of Regulatory Oversight, and we wanted to kind of give an overview of the changes to the administrative rules for factory-built structures for the state of Colorado. My co-host today is Donnie Featherman. He's going to be jumping in as needed. I've got a slide deck I'm going to share. We will also post that slide deck and this recording to the Factory Built Structures Building Codes and Standards webpage. And in case there are people here that are not going to, we're not able to make it. We are expecting a lot of folks. We've got 26 so far. If you have questions, I've only got about 10 or 15 slides, and then there should be lots of time for questions and discussion as you go along. If you have background noise, please keep your microphone muted. Otherwise, you're welcome to jump in or raise your hand is probably the best way to call on you. And Donnie, or type, you can also type chat questions into the chat, and we will respond to them as we go along. So with that, let me share my screen. All right, so with that said, it's a fairly short agenda for the day. We do some quick introductions. We'll talk about the reasons for the amended rules, and then we'll talk about the summary on the rules that we've made. There is a question in the chat about do not see where to raise hand. That's a really good question, Janet.
Yep, Janet, you have to click the react button, the little heart, and then there's a button there to raise your hand.
Okay, thanks, Donnie. So first of all, I want to thank the Technical Advisory Committee that we work with. This is a group of 15 people that are posted or that are assigned to provide guidance from the industry. There are, in statute, it calls out the 15 members. We've got a couple of them here today, but we've been meeting since early this year on these administrative rules and the changes that we have expected to put in place. And I'll talk a little bit about, well, I'll just talk about that right now. So once we get comments back on these administrative rules, they are going to be published in the Colorado Register. And then we will have a hearing before the State Hearing Board. The State Hearing Board is the approval authority for that. We will provide a copy of all written comments that are submitted to us to the State Hearing Board, State Housing Board, in order to help them make their decisions. And then that meeting will be October the 8th, I believe. It will be a publicly noticed meeting. It is going to be virtual this year, so anybody can participate in that State Housing Board rulemaking hearing that we're going to have. And I will put that information out in the newsletter and on the website as we get closer to that date. So the Technical Advisory Committee represents, like I said, it represents industry. We've got manufacturers. We've got 2 tiny home positions. We've got representatives from the electrical and plumbing and architecture, and also like I said, manufacturers, installers, sellers. There is quite a bit of representation on that board, and so we get a really nice, diverse viewpoint on how our administrative rules affect the community. We also have 3 positions, I think, that are local code officials or local building department officials that are also on that. So we look at it from all different aspects. And then, of course, we have staff here that does all the background work, and these are the folks that you deal with on a regular basis. Today, like I mentioned, and we've got Donnie with us, and then Yesenia, I saw her pop into also. She takes care of a lot of the administrative side of that. So I want to talk real quick about the reasons for the amended rules. We have certain statutory requirements that go into effect on the 1st of January that we have to that drive a rule change. And then we have some cleanups and clarifications and reorganization. We take the opportunity to do a rulemaking to clean things up a little bit. And then we also have some minor changes in fees. But the big driver for the changes in the rules are those statutory requirements. And so written into statute is a requirement for us to go to the 2021 IECC. So that's the International Energy Conservation Code. So we took the opportunity to go ahead and I'll talk about it in a minute, move all our code sets up to the 2021 code. We are also required by statute to adopt the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code. And so that there is a link in the slide deck to that. And like I said, that slide deck will be available on the website. And then there was also some legislation for the accessory dwelling units. And it's a big push by the state of Colorado. I think there's a lot of opportunity for tiny homes and modulars and even some of the manufactured housing to allow a second home on a primary on a lot. So that's HB 241152, and I'll talk about some of that as we move forward. So in the newsletter was a link to the red lines on the rules, and I hope that everybody got a chance to open up the rules and took a look at that red line and some of the changes that we made. And I'll go through the changes based on the organization that we currently have in the rules. And so Rule 1 all deals with definitions. And so all my slides on this deck have the red line first clip link, and then at the bottom on where to send comments to. So we add for clarity the definition of certified and registered. We tweaked the multifamily structure definition a little bit. And then we added definition for no cover, open construction, and then we also added temporary structure and temporary use. So if you have any questions on those, we'll probably just go through it rule by rule and see if there's any questions on any of those definitions at this point in time, or any of the changes in Rule 1. These were not big changes, in my opinion. Rule 2 gets into the codes and standards, so this gets into the meat of it quite a bit. So I mentioned that we, by statute, had to go to the 2021 IECC. So we also updated went to the 2021 IRC, IBC, IMC, IPC, and IFGC. So for those of you that have approved plans, like I mentioned, the effective date of these rules, I believe, will be the January 1 of 2025. After that date, if you have approved plans, you have 180 days to come into compliance with those plans. So you are this will drive a plan revisions on a lot of the modular manufacturers. We amend all of those codes, so be sure and take a look at the amendments that we have either carried forward from the 2018 code set that we had, or that we've eliminated because we had moved the 2021 proposed changes back into the 2018 code set. For example, the for tiny homes, what we did is we pulled the 2021 Appendix AQ information in the IRC over into the 2018 code. But since we're adopting the 2021 IRC, we eliminated all that in most places to and Drew, I see your hand up. I'll get you in just a second. And then so we amended those out. So you'll see strike throughs in the red line. And then don't forget, we are on the last year, we went to the 2023 NEC. So be sure and make sure that all your code plan sets are built to the 2023 NEC also. Drew, you got a question?
Yes, sir. So my understanding is that our plans, once approved, are usable as long as our registration is valid. They essentially renew in 3 years when we have to renew our factory registration. So does that mean that if we had something approved this last year and we want to use it again in the same jurisdiction, it would need to then be revised up to the 21? Like, would this conflict with that administrative rule somehow?
Yes, so that will be that will drive, even though you're a 3-year registered manufacturer, you will still have to update the plan set if we change the code set. So that code set will require a change to those plans to incorporate the new code set after January 1 of 2025 within 180 days of that, regardless of whether or not you were a 3-year or one year registered manufacturer.
So we would then resubmit as if it was a new plan, or is there a field change process for that?
I'm not sure I understood your question.
Well, I mean, in Salesforce, would we essentially create a new plan, or would we revise the existing plan?
Yeah, Donnie, you want to talk to that a little bit? I think you just noted as a revised plan and resubmit it.
It'd probably be better to have it under a new plan review, just because the old plan would be for all the units that you built under that old code would be under that plan review record, and then all the new homes that are being built are going to be under the new plan review record, right? Because when you create those assets for each structure, it's going to reference a plan review, and you're going to have some. If you kept it the same, your record will reference a plan that has structures that are built to the old set and the new set, and we wouldn't know the difference, right? So creating a new plan review with the code changes will create a new record number, and that record number will be associated with that asset, and we can track which homes were associated with that new plan set. So the idea behind it is if there's anything that's wrong, right, with those structures, let's say we find an issue that's affecting a structure and it's affecting multiple structures. Well, if we find that it's under the new plan set, we can segregate those plans and those structures out of that possible recall or possible issues that are related just to those units and not to all the units that you ever built under that plan review set, if it was combined with two different code requirements. Okay.
Yeah, understood. So this essentially supersedes our registration. This renders all of the plans that have been approved under 2018 now unusable.
Yes, Drew, and I tend to remember, and I'm sorry I don't have it right in front of me. I tend to remember when we put in that 3-year factory manufacturer registration, I think we caveated that unless there was a code update.
May have, and I'm just not recalling it. So that's crystal clear. Thank you.
Yeah, and then just, Drew, just for clarification, you can build up to that 180-day mark. Any structure that's been built to that prior approved plan, up to that 100-day mark is still approved, but after that 100-day mark, all new structures have to be built to that new plan set.
Is that factory built or oversighted in the field?
Factory built. So that's why it's important to create that timeline when you start the construction. Sometimes we still run into issues with the manufacturer creating an asset after the unit has been built, right? We would like the asset to be created during the construction process so we can create that timeline for events like this where you have a transition of codes, right? So anything that's built prior to that 180-day mark for the transition of the, from the old codes to the new codes, that structure will be accepted, even if it was built to the 2018 codes. Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
And then there's a question in the chat. Jamie from Mobo, can you confirm already plans?
Yep, and I answered that question. Yes, already approved plans will need to be updated or revised and resubmitted. But unless you, and it's just what you said, Donnie, unless you've got a unit in production and it's all completed before that 180 days after so it's June 30th or so of 25.
Yeah, the other thing to take into consideration is the expiration of your factory registration. So if you expire, you know, let's say we have a specific rule that allows you to submit your registration and get approval and still carry on that plan, that approved plan, as long as it's been done within, I think, 120 days. I have to look at the rule real quick, but it's in Rule 4 for the plan review section. As long as you get the registration renewed within that time period, you don't have to renew that plan again within that period. Okay, but since the rules are going to change effective January 1st, if you just renewed, you still have 180 days from that January 1st date to get your plans renewed to the new code.
Follow-up question then, I mean, can we renew our factory registration years prior to expiration so we can sync it up with the code adoption cycle to make best use of that rule?
Well, I'm not sure I understand that.
Yeah, Drew, so it's tough, you know, if there's a major change in code or if there is a statutory requirement to change code sets, then I'm not sure we could ever cleanly align the registration cycle with the code adoption cycle. It might be 4 years before we go to the 20, let's see, we're going to 21, 24. It might be 25, 26 before we go to the 24 code. It could be longer.
Okay, yeah, you guys, so then you're not adopting a 3-year code adoption revision cycle. It'll be sporadic and undetermined.
Yeah, there was a big gap between the 2015 codes and the 2018 code adoption, I think.
Yeah, even right now, we adopted the 2018 and 2018, I believe, and so it's already 2024. So there's a couple cycles there that or at least 3 years, right? So 2021 would have been a year where we would have adopted the 2021, but we didn't.
Okay.
So
we know we're going to have to do another. We know we have some additional requirements coming in 2030. I'm not sure we won't have another rulemaking before then. We don't do rulemaking just for the fun and just to make changes on you guys. We try to keep things as steady state as possible, but you know, sometimes we don't have choices.
Oh, of course. And I think for us as a business, if we're looking at factory registration and code adoption, aligning in some sort of regular cadence, that allows us to develop models, get plans approved, and make best use of our time as a bit. So if it was to be, you know, in your guys' planning on some sort of routine cadence, that would help us be able to develop product, market it, and be efficient on the business side rather than go through sporadic revisions. But you know, that's up to you.
All right, any other questions on the 2021 code set? And like I said, be sure and check the amendments to those in the rules. And don't forget, we're on the 2023 NEC. All right, and then the next one, that adoption of the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code. This is a statutory requirement. The Colorado Energy Office did a very similar stakeholder interest groups and has a committee that was assigned to work on this model code. And it has been published and per statute, and we are forced to adopt it. So we spent some time. We had the Colorado Energy representatives come over to our technical advisory committee meeting and kind of brief about how that was going to affect modular. And so on the electric ready, again, and there is a hot link here and a hot link on our website for the Colorado Model Electric Ready and Solar Ready Code, or you can just Google it and it'll pop up. But be sure and look at that code, you know, that model code. And you know, and anytime you adopt something new, we expect a few wrinkles. If you have wrinkles with compliance with that, the Colorado Energy Office and our office will work together to kind of resolve that. So I would not wait until you're getting ready to submit your plan. I would recommend contacting us before then so we can work through any potential concerns that you have. But the electric ready, the goal there is to, if you're using propane or gas to provide service to your units, you probably need to plan for capacity in your electrical system for full electric. And that may or may not include, depending on how you want to do that, whether or not you have enough capacity in your box to handle a charging station for an electric vehicle. So be sure and take a look at that. That's the biggest part of the electric ready, is in case that unit wants to be all electric. That doesn't mean that you're providing an all electric unit, but it has to have the capacity for that. The other piece of that is the solar ready, and most of that is the roof area on the will have to be marked out on the code set on where you can put solar ready solar panels on the roof and how that's going to be handled. So I know it gets a little tricky. That doesn't mean that you're providing a unit with solar panels. It just is, it needs to be marked out on the roof. And we know that orientation is extremely important. So if you're putting units in a cul-de-sac around the cul-de-sac, your orientation may not be optimal for solar. But all we're going to be looking at is whether or not it has the mark out for the where the panels can go. There's also, Donnie, and I'm going to lean on you here a little bit. There's also for smaller ADUs and tiny homes, a square footage number that if you're below that, if you don't have the space available below that, you don't have to comply. Donnie, do you remember what that said?
Yeah, it's specific to the roof coverage. I think it's anything that's less than 500 square feet doesn't have to comply with the solar readiness.
Right.
But I believe it's a cumulative amount of roof coverage. And I think we're trying to get some clarification on whether or not, you know, if somebody built an on-site garage, right, that has the capacity for that 500 square feet to still allow that dwelling unit to comply with the solar readiness requirements. And so I believe it's specific to the home structure, but I think we need to get some clarification on that.
Thank you, Donnie. And then, Mike, you have a really good question in the regarding the date and updates to the document. We recommend going to the Colorado Energy Office, and there is some background on how they determine those model codes and some footnotes and additional sections. I gave you a link straight to the PDF of the document itself. But if you go to the Colorado Energy Office homepage and scroll down a little bit, you'll see some directions on where to go to the model code backup documents. That might be worthwhile. And I do not believe they made any revisions to that. And Janet, I'm looking at your comment right there.
You get a little context, Janet, of why you posted it?
I thought that's what you were looking for. That's
No.
the exception for the ceiling without attics.
No, that's for the insulation requirements. The solar readiness is the
Oh, okay. I thought for some reason I thought that's what you were asking for.
yeah. And then just to give you a heads up, I believe we kept this in our rule to still allow the R30 in those roofs. And I think the background behind that is to I think it was specifically called out in the tiny home provisions that we put into rule, because a lot of the tiny homes are 400 they're 400 square feet or less, right? And then the new energy codes requires I believe it's a R60 or whatever it is.
Right.
But, what we're proposing is that even if you had like a 5,000 or whatever the 20%, let's say a 5,000 square foot home, and the 20% exceeded that 500 square feet, it's no less energy efficient than a tiny home, right? Or a tiny home is no less efficient than that home that has a designated 500 square feet or 20% of that structure meeting that same energy requirement. So it should still be allowed to use a R30 in the tiny home roof systems.
Yep, and I believe I left that in Rule 2.1, which is the IRC Appendix AQ. All right, any other question on Colorado model electric ready and solar ready? Question from Mike, still on the 500 square foot. Yeah, Mike, we would look at, this question is individual. We would look at the 500 square foot rule for the individual unit, not a community. We're not going to add up all the little tiny house, 400 square feet, and once you hit 2, make you go to a higher requirement.
Yeah, and I think the provisions that are in the Colorado model electric and solar readiness is specific to the structure. So it's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Donnie. All right. So the next 4 adoptions, I want to put some context around those. Those are going to be, and I actually think I say it in the rules, guidance documents. And that is the ICC MBI 1200, 1205, 1210, and then also the ICC 2023 guideline, G6 guideline on advanced panelization. we're trying to stay on top of changes in the industry. And so one of the things that we are doing is we are recommending adoption of those standards for offsite construction and the advanced panelization. The advanced panelization, I sit on a couple of technical review committees that are looking at bringing more manufacturing to Colorado and helping us solve this, the housing shortage that we have. And it seems like advanced panelization is one of the things that we are going to we're going to see more of, right? And so with respect to our statute, it's fairly clear that we can that we have the authority over anything that's in it comes in as on-site in a closed construction, right? Anything that is inside the panel that can't be inspected. Anything open panels that are shipped in them by flatbed and then raised and set on site. The open panels will still be subject to the local jurisdiction requirements, but a closed panel system will go through us. And so those, and then those other three are just guidance documents, and we're starting to see some local adoptions, statewide adoptions of those. I think Utah has approved them, and as has Virginia. Dwayne, I'm not sure why you can't hear anything now. Can everybody else hear me okay? Donnie can. Dwayne, you may have to drop out and reconnect.
It let me back in. I'm not sure what happened, but you went silent for a little bit.
All right, cool. Janet, we did get your email on the ICC and NBI standard adoption. I haven't had a chance to craft a response for you yet.
May I speak about it?
Yeah, if you want to share with the group what you think, that'd be fine.
Because I have a very long history with those two standards. The International Code Council and the Tiny Home Industry Association colluded together and stopped the ASTM committee from being approved for one entire year. And they tried to force the standards, those true standards, on the tiny house industry, first with the tiny home terms in it. Then they were moved after the disapproval at the IBC hearing. And then after we won all of the objections, which were false, 2 months later, they decided to create their own standards in duplication for what we're doing, but put out a press release that they're joining to help us. So it's very disingenuous, this entire experience. And these two standards were not welcomed at the IBC. They're voted down 13-1. One gentleman said these standards are taking over the jobs of the states. They say they're going to disrupt certification in 37 states. There are only 2 states that have adopted it, Virginia and Utah. But Virginia also acknowledges ASTM E541 as a compliance for third parties, because it's a statutory requirement. There's 10 states and HUD that still use ASTM E541 for personnel requirements. I've given the information to this committee probably 3 times on ASTM E541. I also included a document from Virginia. There's been a lot of data and all celebration about how Virginia was the first state, but they failed to mention that ASTM E541 is in law, which supersedes any adopted code or standard. And why I have such this is important is because the purpose is for the tiny house plans in the state of Colorado was to be a solution for affordable housing. If you adopt 1205, I only have a problem with 1205, and only a couple of parts, 2 parts. 100% plant inspection, which is adding one more requirement to our manufacturers that have not even signed up for this in the first place because of all the rules, it's stringent, and it's not affordable to them. There's nothing supporting or incentivizing these manufacturers to sign up for this program when they can just build tiny houses to the RV standards. We don't have zoning, we don't have financing, and then you're going to add one more requirement, such as 100% plant inspection. The problem with that is it's not only just going to be in one state, it's in other states as well. That's not how our builders manufacture. They don't build 15 at a time on assembly line in workstations and mass produce. There are, and we have a nation full of them ready to build and be a solution for the affordable housing crisis, but they're not allowed to because there is no support system for the manufacturers. The other opposition I have with this standard 1205 is it creates a barrier to entry to new third parties being developed, because ICC is running the whole show, which feeds, I'm sorry to be so straightforward here, but last year I was very polite about it, let it all pass, but I will no longer be silent in what they have put our industry through, me personally through. And I'm sorry, but they've developed codes and standards. They have the IIS accreditation. They have ICC inspectors, ICC plan review, ICC. It's all roads leading back to the same organization. ASTM E541 is how all third parties became a third party 50 years ago. HUD still uses that as a personal requirements for their third parties. It's relevant. It's in statutory law. I sent you my documentation on it.
Mm-mm.
I have tried. Yeah, I sent you a link on it, and all the states that still use it. And what's disturbing to me is I've tried to get ICC to acknowledge it, but they won't. 5 years ago, I tried to get them to do it. I was too late. And I'm in meetings right now with ICC, and they ignore it. They've ignored my request. And it's what's going on in 10 other states. I mean, you have to ask yourself, the standards were done 4 or 5 years ago. Why hasn't all the other states gotten on board? Why didn't Texas, Maryland? There's only 2 states in 4 years. Because it's not necessary. These are administrative provisions. And these standards were meant for states that do not have a modular program. Colorado does. You also have a tiny home program. But you adopt 1205, you're adding more requirements. And if you have to adopt it, at least do 2 things. Acknowledge the existence of ASTM E541 as a choice for third parties, and do not impose 100% plant inspection on the small manufacturers. And I appreciate you letting me be so honest, but I've really gone through a lot with this organization who squelched and squashed the ASTM initiative when we already had the support of the Colorado legislators and a New Hampshire legislator. And they killed it just so they could have their name on it. And they told Eric Freed it was for their market share. So I caution you, and I would caution you to really look at what is in 1205, because it's, as Eric Freed says, it's redundant and it's in conflict with what you have already done with the TAC group. And it's also getting you away from affordability of housing. And I thank you for your time.
Janet, thank you for those comments. We try to take a look at all recommendations and align them with our state statute. Our state statute requires approval of every plan set. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to reapprove every time a unit is built. A manufacturer can produce 20, 50, 5 units based on a single plan review. We like to know where that unit is going to be set, but we realize with tiny homes that they are designed to move and be mobile. So there is a way to get a plan approval done on those without a very specific address, but we won't allow an installation of that unit if it doesn't meet the local wind, snow, and those criteria. We also remember if you, last year, we allowed virtual inspections
Right.
also. So, and those would be serving as third-party agencies. So if we have the, and I'll have to get back to you on the local rules, the actual rule in our rules that allows alternative standards to be used for construction, and I think that could be tweaked to allow it for third-party agencies. So I don't think this issue is done yet, and I appreciate your input.
I'm not against 100% inspection for the unit. I'm talking about plant inspection. The
Yeah.
plant itself, the actual facility where they build, which is in that standard 1205, it's 100% plant inspection.
Yeah, well, that could be done virtually, I think. So,
Well, I see in 1205, no, it's not. They're not pushing that. Now, right now, what they're doing, the ICC standards for tiny houses, they're pushing against the IC of the 100% plant inspection. It's just not how our builders might do 7 a year, 2 a year. They don't have the $20,000 down to give that third party, and then to have that third party there in that factory at $5,000 a week to, and then if you ship to another state, then another state has different requirements. And then,
Janet, and I'm not arguing with you, and
Mm.
I don't think this is the place for an argument, but for our third-party inspections, we don't require a third-party agency to be in the factory every single day. What we require is an approved quality assurance representative, which can be an employee of the factory or the manufacturer himself, to actually make sure that every single code required inspection is done at every stage. And all we require from the third parties is one rough and one final inspection of every unit. And so, and like I said, we expanded that to allow virtual also. So.
Well, Sam, I apologize. I'm not trying to argue. I'm saying 1205 is more stringent than what you're already requiring. So it's in conflict. I don't mind what 1205 is requiring more. That's what I'm trying to say.
And we have added a sentence in the rule in chapter 2 that says if there's a conflict between the administrative rules of what we require and the codes, that we will provide guidance on that. So yeah, if there's a stricter requirement in 1205 that we by chance missed, then we can come up with administrative guidance on that. It's not our intent to be the most restrictive state in the union, and we understand the goal of tiny homes, and we understand the tiny home bill. So it is, as you will also see in Rule 4 when we get there, we've allowed some homeowner manufacturing of tiny homes for their own use also. So we are flexible.
Thank you, Sam.
You bet. Any other questions on the 1200, 1205, 1210 or the G6?
Sam, I did want to clarify something. So for the two concerns that Janet had, even with the rules that we adopt, you still have a 100% inspection requirement, because you're inspecting the construction at every phase of construction for that unit. But as Sam said, we only require 2 inspections by a third-party agency, and that's the rough and that's the final. But let's say that third-party agency finds an issue upstream or downstream of that required inspection. That third party can request a higher frequency of inspections, right? We can do the same thing at the DOH level. If we go out and we do a factory inspection at the rough and we see issues with the floors, we're going to want to come out there when you're building the floors to make sure that the floors are being built correctly and not finding it at the rough stage, right? So they're still 100%, but that 100% is in combination of the QA/QC responsible party, and then also the Division of Housing or the third-party agency that's out there doing the inspection. The other thing for the third-party agency requirements, we have requirements in rule. So there might be specific requirements that are in the 1200 or 1205 that are, or even the ANSI requirement that you mentioned. Our rules specifically state what those requirements are. And so what we can do, Janet, if the concern is that maybe we're too stringent for our requirements, maybe that's something that we can change in rule. Or if if ours are fine, then we wouldn't have to make any changes. And then as Sam said earlier, that if there's any conflict between a rule and a standard that is adopted, I believe it's what it says is that the rules apply, right? So in this case, even though we have adopted the 1200 and 1205 for guidance, our standards are specific to our state statutes, and what's in rule follow what's required in statute. So our rules would be more stringent, specific to what we are allowed to do, and that's what we would follow. We wouldn't adopt something and then take on that code if our law doesn't allow us to do that. So you know, we have, that's why we have certification of manufacturers, certification of installers. If you look at a lot of the ICC requirements, there's a reason why they have their minimum requirements to be inspectors. Even in DOORS statutes, they have plumbing requirements and electrical requirements for certifications. We don't have those same requirements. Our laws are different, and we follow those laws and not other standards requirements. And if it's something that we think is not meeting the requirements of the our safety and construction standards, we amend those, like some of the amendments that we make in Rule 2, right? So I do hear your concern, but at the same time, it's a similar process. It's just ours is not as stringent as the 1205. And it's specific in rule. It's already written in rule what we do, what we allow.
All right, thank you, everybody. We are going to then jump to Rule 3, if that's okay with everybody. We did tweak the fees. This is the fee section. Basically, almost everything stays the same. We added a revision fee of $50 an hour, $50 minimum. And I believe, Donnie, that was for the second revision. I've got to go back and look at that.
No, I think there was, the way it was written in rules, it said second resubmittal.
Yeah, second resubmittal.
And then I think that was changed. And then when we don't have, so the revision fees that currently in there is still charges by the square foot. So we changed it because if you're making small changes, how do we charge per square foot for those changes, right? So what we added is a revision fee of $50 per hour, minimum $50 for the revisions, because there's a lot of revisions that are occurring and we can't charge a square footage fee for those.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
And then as-built structure, we still see some occasional units coming in and installed and are as-built. And so we did not have a way to, those require a lot of extra effort on our part. So we just went with 2x the normal fees on those. And then we raised registration, installer registration fees to $250 from $150. And that is the cap allowed in statute, I believe. Any questions on those? All right. Rule 4, this is the manufacturer section, also called the factory-built residential structures, modular and tiny homes, and non-residential structures, commercial requirements. We added tiny homes for personal use in there. If which was I was alluding to. If a homeowner wants to build one tiny home for personal use, we allowed some exemptions on some of the manufacturer's registration requirements. And then 414.4.1, that alludes back to that accessory dwelling unit bill that I mentioned earlier, and that is if the Division of Housing approves a model code that is based on zones for grouping climatic, geographic, and wildfire risk conditions together. It is it's the intent that we would be able to allow, as the manufacturers know, we ask for an address for the unit to check it against a very specific set of wind, snow, winter design temp, and wildfire risk requirements that have been adopted by the local level. We're working on some options now to come based on this bill, which is actually the managing organization is Division of Local Government within the Department of Local Affairs. But I sit on that group, and so I'm trying to provide them some guidance to come up with zones for where an ADU might be allowed any place within that zone. And so there's a couple of options in the TAC, and we've talked about it at the TAC meeting, Technical Advisory Committee meeting, several times. Do we make it the most restrictive within the zone, or do we pick some place in the middle that would allow easier adoption and with an opt-in from the locals to allow us to get ADUs on the ground at a more reasonable price point? So we don't have that done yet, but that 4.14.4.1 gives us the option to do those zones, and then the manufacturers would not be required to provide a physical address, but only say, hey, this unit is built for zones 1 through 3 or 1 and 2 or something like that. We hope to get through that as quickly as we can, but it is not quite ready for press. I still need to do Donnie and I still need to do some research and thought on what those zones are. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, and I see in the chat, Janet and Donnie having a conversation. Yeah, Janet, if you have that very specific requirement in 1205, we can certainly take a look at that. And then there's just some other clarifying language throughout Rule 4. Any other questions on Rule 4? All right, we got about 30 minutes to bring this thing home. I appreciate your time. Rule 5, sellers. We clarified that seller's registration is required for some IBC residential units. And that is units that are basically what we're trying to do is the whole reason for the registered seller rule is to protect the consumer. And so we just provided some clarification on that. And primary in the townhome or multifamily type situation where a consumer may be buying a unit directly. Rule 6, installations of manufactured homes and tiny homes. We added a little bit on responsible party under 6.5.1. That's always been a tough one to clarify for us, so we continue to tweak that a little bit. And then on 631 through 636, we clarified the installation of tiny homes. Now remember, with these tiny homes, We're still recommending that they come with we're still requiring that they come with an installation handbook with 3 sets of instructions. One, to be used as an RV in an RV parking spot. The second on a temporary foundation, and the third on a permanent foundation. So tiny homes still have the option to go on temporary or permanent foundations and be approved as the state. If you were putting a tiny home in an RV spot, and we're seeing a lot of these tiny home communities pop up, which are zoned as RV campgrounds, then they would fall without outside of the state inspection. Any questions on Rule 6? Rule 7. So we had foundation information scattered around in multiple places, and we pulled it all into its own rule, and then we moved Rule 7 was enforcement, and we moved that and made that Rule 8. So Rule 7 is now strictly on foundations. Now the Division of Housing, oh, I'm sorry, Janet, I missed your hand up. What you got?
Sorry, Sam.
That's okay.
You kind of skipped over that a tiny house in an RV park. Can we talk a little bit more about that still, please? I'm sorry. That was kind of quick.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, that's very important right now. Okay. Because, we had that big issue with Bayfield, Colorado, and what they ended up doing, because there was no manufacturer that signed up for the program, is now they're allowing either the state program or a tiny house RV with a 55-pound snow load, electrical inspection, hooked to utilities, and they'll give them a CO. So you just kind of said that very quickly, that if they're in an RV park, they are exempt from, please say that statement one more time so I understand it.
So I said they are not subject to going through the building codes and standards. We cannot tell a local jurisdiction who and what they can give a CO to. We cannot tell so that's where it gets to be a little tricky, right?
Yes.
We would not classify those as long-term dwellings.
Okay.
But if the local jurisdictions have decided, and it's the same with any RV, in most communities, RVs have a 30-day limit in one spot. Sometimes it's 60, 90. Elbert County, you could have one for 180 days if you were building a home on the property. If the locals decide to allow year-round occupancy in an RV, then that's up to them, and the units are outside of the program.
Thank you for that clarity. Thank you.
All right, Rule 7 is foundations. Now remember, Rule 7 foundations, the Division of Housing is responsible for approval of the plan and inspections of foundations in areas of the state that don't have a building department. So if you're putting units in an area of the state, a county that doesn't have a local building department, then those foundations need to go through us. And so Rule 7 just kind of, like I said, groups all that together. The reason for that was there was a statutory change that gave us this responsibility to approve those foundations. So by statute, we have to do this. And I will tell you that 80% of the complaints we get on units are in areas of the state that do not have a building department, and their foundations have not been, design has not been approved. So this will include both HUD units and our units and modular units and tiny homes if they're going on a temporary or a permanent foundation. Those foundations need to be approved by the state. Now, and Dwayne, I see your hand up. Give me just a sec. And then, so if the local town or the local county has a permit department, in a lot of cases, that's different. They may still get their $50 to give you a permit to put a home on a piece of property, But if they're not inspecting the foundation, then that is still our responsibility. Dwayne? Did you have a comment, Dwayne, or a question?
You might still be having computer issues.
Yeah, maybe so.
Is that better?
A little
Yeah,
bit.
a little better.
All right. How does that affect Class B non-residential for foundations? Temporary.
So
Wait, say
Dwayne,
that
was
again?
the question, do we require this for commercial units?
Correct. So our main business is temporary modular office space. So Class B, not class for residential.
Okay.
How does the when they don't have a building department, how does that affect the foundations for the modular trailers?
Donnie, can you help me on that?
You said if there's no local building department, how does it affect the installation of those modular trailers?
Right, that are Class B office, not meant for residential.
Yeah, so the statute requires factory built structures, right, to be overseen by us for the foundation systems. But we have two ways to comply with the requirements for foundation systems. So you either submit an engineer design for the foundation itself, doesn't matter if it's permanent or temporary, or you use the installation manual that's provided by the manufacturer that's stamped by an engineer for the installation of that product. So if you, like with your type of products, you have, I believe, like, let's say 6 models, right? But each or every model has the same installation process, and you have one installation manual that you can use to install that unit. That engineered design can be used as part of your foundation submittal and reviewed for compliance for installation at that site location. So the ones that are a little bit different would be like a permanent foundation system. If you're doing a permanent wall, those are going to be really dependent on all the site specific elements. So soils conditions, if you're in flood zone, things like that. Temporary foundations, even like in a mobile home park, if you look at just about every single installation manual, they're almost exactly the same. But like I said, there's 2 ways to comply with that foundation design requirement. It's either an engineer design specific for that site, or you have an installation manual that covers the different types of installations for the different soils types. We actually, if you look in the new rules, rule 7, or not rule 7. One of the things I'm doing right now is updating our installation manuals for the Division of Housing. That includes breaks up the soils conditions a little bit better, but basically that same concept is in every single installation manual that you use, because they don't know where it's going to go in the state, and the soils conditions can vary by state and by location within the state. But they list out a table of if you meet this soil condition, you have to meet this PSI. If you meet this soil condition, you have to meet this PSI for your load bearing capacities. So I just don't know with you specifically, since we've never regulated those in the past, if you have an installation manual for your clients to use when they're installing your products. But that installation manual can be used, if you do have one, to submit for approval.
I'll grab offline with you guys and send some of the stuff that we have, because the manufacturer of the anchoring systems that we use does have a full installation manual. And then if it's outside the installation manual, we have a state licensed engineer that will draw a site specific plan and stamp it. And that's where I'm just trying to figure out, are we going to have to send that plan to you guys for review before we send it to the customer for their permitting? So But I think in this distinct situation, it's probably best if we just grab an offline, the three of us. I'll send an email and we can come up with what that looks like.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, but the answer to your question is yes, it does have to be sent to us and approved prior to you actually occupying that structure. So, you know, it doesn't have to be approved before you ship the unit to the site location, but before it's set and occupied, that foundation system does have to be approved and inspected.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Anything else on foundations? And we just renumbered Rule 8. Every place it had 7 point something, we changed it to 8 point something. All right, so Nicole, you want to go back to and that is actually the end of my presentation. And Nicole, we'll jump back to your comment in just a second. For those that need to drop off, if you have concerns on any of these rules or want your comments to be part of the permanent record, please send those to me, preferably by the end of the week. If you need to go out a little bit, you can. But I have to prepare the package for the State Housing Board meeting, which is October 8th, I think. So, but yes, if you have written comments, please send it to me. Nicole, let me read your comment real quick. Code change cycle, timeline after this was discussed, but want to be sure we read quickly. Donnie, I might need help on that. You know, the perfect answer is just go ahead and change your plan sets now, but let's talk about this. If the unit is built, and Donnie, I would say delivered.
So as long as the construction at the factory starts before that turnover date, right?
Yeah.
As long as you created that asset, starting that timeline of the production of that unit, you can build that unit to the 2018 code requirements as approved prior, right? If let's say it's 181 days and you try to build that same unit off that old plan set, it's not going to be accepted. Okay, and then it should be up to the third-party agency and the Division of Housing to verify if this plan set's expired or not expired, but if that plan set should have been updated for the construction of that unit, or if it's okay to still continue to build that unit off that same plan. But you got to remember that the construction has to start before that 180-day transition happens. And this is pretty typical for even a local building department. Once they approve your plan set, that like even a permit, right? A permit is good for the time frame that it's allowed on that permit card. But if you start a construction after that permit card, they're going to require you to either get an extension, an approval through the building official, or they're going to require you to submit a whole new permit, right? That's basically the same process. You have until that date to get things started, and then we can go ahead and continue that process as long as it was started before that transition date.
I want to go back to the tiny homes and RV spots question real quick, discussion. As I mentioned, the local jurisdictions can provide a CO if they want to. Not all local jurisdictions provide COs anymore, and the state no longer provides COs, certificates of occupancies. I will say that if a tiny home or a unit is going on to a property that requires electrical and plumbing hookups, the local jurisdictions and DORA, the state of regulatory agencies for electricians and plumbers, will not provide utility hookups to those units without our insignia on them. So we work in partnership with that. So if they're using an RV hookup and pulling into an RV spot and staying there year round, then that's their option. And I have counseled building departments and county managers and county attorneys that what they're basically providing is year-round occupancy for a unit that has not been inspected by the state. So that is, again, on the locals. It's not on us, but don't forget, when you're talking to your constituents and talking to your industry associations, the Department of Regulatory Agencies does not follow, is going to look for our insignia on there that it is a certified unit for utility hookups. Any other questions? I stopped sharing the PowerPoint because we were done with that. Well, I do appreciate everybody's time today. We will end 15 minutes early and look for the recording and the PowerPoint to be up on the website soon, and we'll send out another newsletter with that. Any other questions that you didn't want to share in a group setting, feel free to email Donnie and myself, and we will get back to you just as quickly as we can.
Hey, thanks a lot, Donnie and Sam. Good job today. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Sam.